Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Revolver Fan First podcast. I'm your host, Christina. I'm here today with Kirk Windstein of Crowbar to go deep into his history as a fan. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
That's great. So we always ask the same question first. Who was the first artist you put on a pedestal?
Believe it or not, Elton John.
Really?
Yeah. My first vinyl LP, like album, was I was 8 years old. Elton John's Greatest Hits Volume 1 that came out in 1973.
Awesome.
And I actually took piano lessons around that time because I fell in love with Elton John. Not literally, but love everything he's done. Nothing wrong with that, but anyway. So what happened was I started taking piano lessons and I got frustrated really quickly because I wanted to play like Elton John. I didn't understand. I was a kid. That was my first venture into music. But he was the first one I put on a pedestal. And then a few years down the line, it was Kiss, mainly Ace Frehley.
Yeah.
But yeah, it all started, believe it or not, my rock and roll. I was really into, like, my first record ever was the single of Let It Be by the Beatles. My Aunt Sue, who was a lot younger than my mother, she was like, I was 5 at the time. She was like in high school or something, like a senior in high school. Well, she got me the 45 7-inch single for Let It Be.
Yeah.
But I got really into Wings after, and I had all of their singles. But my first album that I ever owned was Elton John. I had my one. And then I think the next record I owned was the best of BTO, Bachman Turner Overdrive, the Canadian band. And then probably from there, it was Kiss. I discovered Kiss in 1975 at the age of 10.
Yeah.
And never looked back. That was it. Once I heard Ace Frehley play guitar, that was it.
They've had a pretty seismic impact. Like, I think I've probably spoken about Kiss more on this show than anyone else. Same as Maynard from Tool.
Oh, wow.
Session with Ace Frehley is just like, Ace was just everything to me. Like, it was like, they're kind of silly songs in some ways, but what he did with guitar really just elevated it to this whole other level. Like, it just made it so much more interesting and creative.
Yeah, I totally agree. To me, as a straight up musician, I think he was definitely the best musician in the band. And although, Paul and Gene write the majority of the songs and they're both great songwriters, the songs that Ace did write are great songs. Parasite and Cold Gin and Strange Ways and, whatever, and his first solo record, of course, was, the biggest seller. And I still listen to all that stuff all the time. I'm old school.
What did you think about like their visual identity? Like, going back to even Elton John, like, what did you think of like the visuals, like their whole, and costumes and the whole, yeah.
I guess for being a person who's so unvisual, and you can see me, but I'm not very, very visually appealing on and off stage. But I guess, Elton John, it was really about the music. Of course, I would see the rock and roll magazines with photos, and I saw how flamboyant the costumes were and all of that stuff. He was Cher before Cher. But which I did enjoy. It was a great show, and I loved his persona, on stage and the way I loved all of that. And with Kiss, I will admit, my first attraction was seeing a picture of them in a magazine, a music mag, and I'm like, I gotta hear this band. And a friend of mine who sadly passed away years ago brought Kiss Alive 1 to school. It was his older brother's copy, and he let me borrow it for like 2 nights or something. And I was sold. Not on, of course, on looking at the booklet and the whole album. Back in those days, we actually looked at the album cover and knew I knew who wrote every song. I knew who the producer was. I know that Kiss had Rocksteady Music and this and that, and publishing companies with ASCAP and blah blah blah. I knew all of this shit just from reading all the albums. But at first it was totally a visual thing. But even like today or whatever, like when I listen to Kiss now, and I do collect. Not like, my God, not like on the John 5 level.
I just spent my
But
whole
hey,
jaw dropped on that one. Yeah.
God only knows what I would have to sell and do to be able to afford that collection. But anyway, I do collect certain things, but
Yeah.
I make it a pact, and it's no hard feelings, but I only buy things that have Ace and Peter on them. That's just my thing, and I have nothing at all against. I mean, I think they got a great band with Eric Singer and Tommy Thayer. Even Ace Frehley himself said, he goes, I have no hard feelings. I read an interview. This is what he said then. I don't know, but he said I have no hard feelings against Tommy Thayer. If it wasn't him, it'd be somebody else.
Okay.
And he's right. They'd stick somebody else in the makeup and push him off as a spaceman. But you know what? I've been saying this in a lot of the interviews, and I really don't want to. Not that Gene and Paul are going to see this, but I understand what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't understand is I've seen Ace really solo quite a few times. I saw him a few years ago. Me and Robin, my wife, and some friends drove to Florida to see him, and I looked at stuff, all over YouTube, and it's like, I mean, they say Peter can't play drums. Maybe not. He's 74 years old. He's older, and the drums are a physical instrument, but it's like, don't tell me Ace really can't play the fucking guitar, because I've seen him do it, recently.
Yeah. It would have been great to see them back then. I have to admit, I did see Kiss the same week I saw Ozzy Osbourne with Zakk Wylde on guitar and Mike Bordin on drums. And I have to say, there was a true winner that week. And honestly, Ozzy was so good, people were taking their tops off just because it was honestly that good. And it was, no disrespect to Kiss. I'm just saying, you want to go up against Ozzy, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have trouble. Yeah. It's a hard week. But anyway, I digress. So you were 15 in 1980. What was that like? What was that? What was the musical world that you were kind of being exposed to at that point?
It was very strange because it was a combination of, like, I went from Kiss, and as I started losing interest because, I guess they were having so much inner turmoil. And then the second I heard, I Was Made for Loving You, although I do love the song to this day, it's a great song. And I'm glad that it was so successful, worldwide.
Yeah.
But I had the Dynasty record, and it just wasn't doing it for me. Well, around that same exact time is when I discovered the brilliance of a band from fucking California called Van Halen. So that became my life, and although Ace is a bigger influence because I can play most of his shit, or I like to think I can.
Yeah.
I could never play Edward stuff, but it was just a breath of fresh air. Yeah. They were smiling, they were energetic, and my first real concert was Van Halen in the 1980 Invasion. It was the Women and Children First tour at the Centroplex in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I was, back then it was general admission. So, wherever you got to, that was your spot. Well, I knew, of course, exactly where Eddie would be. And, there's a bunch of old guys drinking beer and smoking weed and shit. And I'm like running track, lifting weights, playing football. So I'm like, up at the front of the line, and they probably had like 50 people in front of me. I'm like, fuck this. It was a track meet. I went straight in front, boom, barricade right in front of Eddie. And that was my first. I still remember it. I mean, that's 2 years ago or something. Yeah. And I still remember it, like perfectly. But 1979, 1980 was a weird musical time because the 70s rock bands were really fading out. You had New Wave, which I did like bands like, the Cars and Blondie and whatnot that were the more popular bands. I mean, I own records from them, but it was a transitional period. Also, right at that time was New Wave of British heavy metal, and that struck me. So, although I was still all about Van Halen, I started realizing, well, there's shit a lot heavier. Like I was just always going for what might be heavy. Of course, I loved Sabbath and Zeppelin. I'm a huge Zeppelin fan, but I as I started to discover the Judas Priest, I think was the first. I probably discovered them about 80, 81-ish. Yeah. First Iron Maiden, first two Iron Maidens, which are still my favorite. I love Paul Di'Anno, although Bruce is magnificent, and the bands would not be where they are without a doubt without Bruce. But Rob Halford is kind of a tie for me with Ronnie James Dio as my favorite metal vocalist, or just vocalist period, really.
Yeah.
you know, that whole time, I mean, I discovered Motorhead, I discovered Saxon, I discovered, you know, Angel Witch, and just all, you know, it was just one band after the other coming out of England, you know, and Germany. I mean, Scorpions had already been around for a while, but started putting out heavier music. I discovered Accept, you know, a little bit later, I guess around 82 with Restless and Wild. And that's still one of my favorite bands. So is Saxon, so is Priest, so is Motorhead. It's just, you know, that's, I mean, people are like, you know, well, what's in your car? What do you listen to? I'm like, well, I got some Motorhead, I got Plasmatics, I got Armored Saint, I got Madball, I got you know, Sick of It All, you know, a couple of hardcore bands that I love, and along with all the other hardcore stuff. But you know, that's the stuff I listen to. When I'm listening to CDs, or like, my phone doesn't have music on it. I don't know how to do that. So I listen to CDs. Well, my CD player in the car broke, and the car is it's in great shape, and it doesn't have many miles, but it's 20 years old. It just isn't driven, you know. Well, normally we're on tour more than half the year, but so it's so old school that I have a 6 CD player in there. So I have 6 great CDs trapped inside that fucking stereo, and I'm determined to get one of my friends who knows how to do that stuff to dig them out for me so they're not lost. But now when I listen to radio music, I listen mainly to a station out of the Baton Rouge area, and it's an 80s pop station. So it's more or less you know, Cyndi Lauper, Whitney Houston, the Cutting Crew, and what's some of the other ones, babe? Like,
just classics.
Yeah, it's all like the 80s MTV era.
What do you like singing along to?
What's that?
What do you like singing along to? What's your like favorite 80s sing along to?
All of it. I'm like a sucker for pop music, and that's the truth. I just am. I always have been since. And I love. I won't say pop metal, but I love pop. Like Cheap Trick are one of my favorite bands, which it's hard rock, but it's pop. And you know, pop is short for popular. So pop music is popular music. So there's nothing wrong with that.
And being raised on Elton John, that's absolute pop music songcraft. Like there's nothing
exactly
in the, you know, those hooks and all that kind of stuff. And you know, you've got mad groove in your. Okay, I've got a really ridiculous question.
Sure.
Your blues and punk rock and metal, they're all a part of your musical soul. Fuck, marry, kill. Who would you, as a music, do you fuck blues? Do you marry blues? Do you kill heavy metal? This is the first time.
I mean,
I'm just throwing it out there.
Honestly, to me, rock and roll is rock and roll, but the blues you can't go wrong with.
So marry blues.
Yes, absolutely. Because without that, I mean, especially that's probably why I'm a bit, and I'm in the minority, I believe, but I'm a bit bigger of a Judas Priest fan than I am of an Iron Maiden fan, just because Priest was more in the early days a bluesier band that developed into heavy metal. And in my eyes, even though you had Black Sabbath, they were just fucking heavy, but they were a blues band that evolved into probably the first heavy metal band, even though they didn't really, you know, Priest took on the whole image and everything of what would become heavy metal. But, you know, as much, you know, I love Maiden pretty much, you know, equally. It's two of the most brilliant and most influential of the metal bands of all time. And Sabbath, of course, is Sabbath. I mean, that's its own, like I read something with Ben Ward from Orange Goblin, who's a great guy. And he said it's more than, you know, it's a religion, you know, it's more than just Black Sabbath is its own thing. And, you know, oddly enough for me, once again, I'm in the vast minority here, but I'm actually, I won't say bigger, but I'm an equal fan of Sabbath with Dio as I am Sabbath with Ozzy. And we were lucky enough, we're lucky enough to support Heaven and Hell twice, including one. And like, what part of Australia are you
I
in?
saw those shows. We came and hung out with you guys.
Okay, you look familiar. You do. I'm like,
yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah,
That was
awesome.
my my favorite shows of all time, actually.
It was great. It was just down
Yeah.
and and well, not David Sabbath, and we would. It was great because a lot of people don't know, but in Australia, everything's a fly date. Like I remember we did one where we stationed. We kind of camped out at one hotel and we had some shows that were close drives. So we took shuttle vans like Wollongong or something. I remember driving there and back. I don't know if we were in Sydney or Melbourne, one of the bigger cities, but yeah, I'll never forget. We started in Perth and that was my first time in Australia. So we had already done like 11 shows with them in Canada. Earlier, I'm trying to think of what year. Yeah, I think earlier that year. Early in the year as we were finishing up the Down 3 record, and everything went great. Well, when we did the Perth show and the whole Australian, and we did do one in Auckland, New Zealand, that was the last show. But when we did it, it was great because at the last show of the Canadian dates, we got to go meet and take photos with Tony Iommi, and we got to go meet and take photos with Ronnie James Dio, but we didn't see him otherwise. Well, in Australia, we fly with them, we take the bus with them to the hotel. We stay at the same hotels most of the time, and it was just down in heaven and hell. So the second we heard a chord, Pepper and I were like two little kids, Pepper Keenan, and we run and just sit at the barricade as I know me. Well, it started to go toward, as the tour continued to go and move on, where we'd see the guys so often, they knew our names, and they were always in first class, and we board the plane, and it'd be like, hey, Kirk, how you doing today, mate? Hey, and Ronnie's like, hey, high five, and we walk down the aisle, and it was just, it was such an amazing thing. It really was. That looks great, man.
I love Heaven and Hell. It's just there's so much shared. There's so much soul in those bands, like there's and that's well, I mean, speaking of Down, obviously there's and Pantera. When did you first see Pantera, and what were you struck by them as a band? And obviously you guys had a long relationship.
Believe it or not, I saw Pantera before Phil joined.
Right.
Yeah, I saw him. Me and some friends drove to Houston, Texas, and we saw them at a place called Cardi's. And I think they did like 5 45-minute sets. And they were always into fanzines and stuff as like a local type thing. And then I remember right around the time Phil flew to try out for Pantera, we went and played American football, not to be confused. We went and played a game at the playground, and we were dropping off another friend, and I happened to have, or he had one of the Pantera, like Hot and Heavy or some song he wanted me to hear. And he popped it in and he's like, dude, I'm going to try out for this band. And I'm like, dude, I saw them. I said, they're killer, it'll be great. And he's like, keep it quiet, but so he did, and he got the gig. So, I was really lucky enough to be able to see the band. I'm not talking about the particular gig before Phil, but when he joined, I would come every 2 months or something and stay for a week or so. And in the early days, Vinnie Paul, God bless him, would be driving the Pontiac Grand Prix with him and the other 3 band members. And I'd be with one of Phil's friends driving, pounding beers and following them to the show and whatever. And then I finally graduated when they bought the van. I got to sit and ride with the band usually to the gigs, but I got to watch them go from a cover song band throwing in originals to really writing, everything that would end up being on Cowboys from Hell.
Yeah. And
seeing them perform all that stuff live. And they finally got, right before they got signed, to the point where, other than a few songs for fun, they quit doing covers. They do like 2 sets or, one super long set on Friday and Saturday night. And it was selling out all the clubs. And it was obvious that this band was something special, So I got to watch them graduate from riding in Vinnie Paul's Pontiac, which was a little beat up, but God bless him. But I got to go watch from that to #1 platinum record and sold out arenas, and I got to Phil and the guys were cool enough to take us out on tour with them a few times, so we got to play arenas, opening for fucking Pantera, at the height of their career. So it was a great thing. I'm still one of my favorite bands, definitely the best heavy metal band of my time, as far as the other guys. I mean Rob Halford's like 70 years old. not that I'm young, I'm almost 57, but still, those guys, like I'm friends with Paul, a guitar player from Saxon, and I know he's getting up there a little bit, but those guys are one generation ahead of me, but they're the ones that influenced me, but Pantera were a band. I'm older than, I think Vinny and I, well, I mean, of course, sadly, the man passed away, but I think we might have been the same age, or he might have been 1 year older. I know Dime was 1 year younger than me, and I'm 3 years. Rex is actually a little older. He's about, I think his birthday is July 27th. So I think he'll be 58 and I'll be 57 in April.
Yeah.
So other than, but they're my age basically. Yeah. So when I say of my generation, I mean of guys in their 50s or late 40s or whatever, and even going into early 60s that, that were into metal during the 90s. I mean, they really were the one band in the United States, at least, that really kept metal. They flew the flag for heavy metal 100%. more so than anybody. I mean, you can argue it, but, to me, I mean, although they got bigger success, Metallica. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of the Black Album. Yeah. And, it catches way too much flack. It's an amazing record. But I got into Metallica on Kill 'Em All. I got into Megadeth on Killing Is My Business. I got into Anthrax on Fistful of Metal. Yeah. So I watched the growth of these bands as well. But Pantera were the new kids on the block, not the boy supergroup, but they were the new guys that came out and kind of flew the flag for heavy metal, and they did it. Amongst during the biggest rush of grunge and Nirvana and Soundgarden and all these bands that are, brilliant bands, but were far from heavy metal. Yeah. Pantera were fucking heavy metal.
Yes.
And the other guys in the older bands, were still doing metal, but they had been there, a lot longer. So Pantera were a brand new band coming out in 1990, right when, everything was grunge, it was ruling the radio waves and everything here. And, they just pounded the pavement, and they were just such a brilliant live band. Like I always say, and it's not because Vinny and Don were brothers. I always say they're the heavy metal Van Halen to me, in the sense that they were arena rock ready. Yeah. When they signed that contracts to go open to support somebody. They were like, they've been doing this since they're teenagers, and they're all incredible musicians. Phil's a great, amazing vocalist. And so they were arena rock ready before they ever set stage in a big fucking arena. Unlike other bands trying to find their footing and getting used to it or whatever, they had already cut their teeth and were masters of their craft before they ever set foot on a stage in a big venue.
Yeah, that's what Guy Sachs told me, who obviously followed them around from the
sure.
Like, he's a lovely man, but he followed them from when Dime was underage, and like
I know he was Rex's bass tech for a while, and then when I first met Guy, and then when they started touring, he took over tour manager duties, and he actually tour managed Down on the Down 2 touring. So he was my roommate during the Down 2 touring, actually. So great guy. Great guy.
I love your whole worlds. It's and look, Pantera had such a seismic impact because they were huge then, but even me as like not being really old enough to experience it in 1990, they still 10 years later were still one of the biggest heavy metal bands in the world, and a whole new generation.
Oh, absolutely.
Whole new generation of teenagers was finding them. Like it's
crazy because, people are often like, because I was very, like Dime, even though Phil and I are, extremely close, and we've been friends longer. Me and Don kind of hit it off when I used to go visit Phil and hang with him. Of course, I'd hang with the other guys too. But me and Don just, we both play guitar, although obviously he's about a zillion times better than me. But, we both play guitar, and we both had a thing for Ace Frehley. We both had a thing. We just liked all of the same shit. Like Phil didn't want to listen to Kiss Rock and Roll Over, but me and Dime would. Dime and I, like I was saying, we had so much in common, not just being guitar players, but, we grew up on the same music, and really Phil grew up on that music as well. But at that point in his life, he was in a constant, unending search for the most underground stuff he could find. So he would be, like me and Dime would listen to Kiss Rock and Roll Over or Kiss Alive or Cheap Trick or, you know, Van Halen 1 and 2 or whatever, you know, stuff that we grew up on. Whereas Phil was more into underground. Like I said, you know, he'd be more likely to put on the first Sepultura or anything. He was really into thrash at the time. So anything thrashy, it's the more underground, the better for him, which I get, you know. I mean, I went through a stage similar to that, but you know, it worked. Obviously, you know what he was doing, but I'm not videoing him all out. But yeah, so you know that was the whole thing, you know. And then I ended up, you know, a lot of times when we were just in a van or whatever, you know, I would ride with Dime on Dime's bus, you know, with those guys, because you know we would just do shots and drink beer and listen to us, you know, 70s rock and roll and talk music and talk guitar, you know. So we always you know, we always kind of hung out a lot, you know, as far as you know, and even on off days, you know, Phil would bring like a 4-track recorder up to his room, and so would Dime. But occasionally, you know, I'd meet Dime in his, you know, at his room or something, and we'd mess around, you know, on 4-track stuff, or we go, you know, whatever, just do stupid stuff, you know, nothing. Well, and some of it was crazy, but you know, all in good fun. Just young dudes having fun and letting loose, and it was cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, you guys really developed a sound that's very distinct to like where you're from. Like I know I spoke to Vinny once and he was talking about at that time everything was coming out of like New York and LA and then Seattle, but they wanted to make the sound in Texas, and your music is so intrinsically tied to New Orleans. Like
Right.
what about okay, I read this quote and it's a bit raw, but it's about New Orleans, and I wanted to read it to you and see what you think. So this is just some person on the internet. She's traveled a lot, and someone said, "What are your thoughts on New Orleans?" She said, "New Orleans is a filthy pile of hot sex and shit. Everything there is thick. The air, the women, the patois. Just thinking of that city makes me want to get fucked on a balcony. The rest of America doesn't deserve." It's quite.
Well,
Yeah.
Pretty stupid.
yeah, the rest of America doesn't deserve New Orleans, you know, maybe, but not in that sense. You know?
Sorry, it's a bit rude. I don't mean to like be rude.
No. I mean, look,
like,
you know,
powerful. It's got a feel.
it's not for everyone, and that's the truth.
That's not
But
true.
when you're from here, you know, you tend to just have a love for it that never goes away. Even though, like
What about
on the Down 2 record, you know, we have a song called "New Orleans is a Dying Whore,"
Great tune.
and the actual thing, there was this guy, Ronnie Vergitz, I think his name was. He was on the news every night, and he had this cool voice with a New Orleans accent, and he would say all these different, you know, just cool stuff about you know, that only New Orleans people would even get.
Yeah.
Well, it was a quote in a magazine article with him, and it said, "New Orleans is a dying whore, but I still love her." So I think Pepper actually brought that up to Phil, and then he went and wrote the lyrics to "New Orleans is a Dying Whore." And we all agreed, we're like, it is. I mean, the crime is outrageous. I watch the news. I'm one of them old school people. I like to watch the local news, see what the weather is, see what's going on with the sports, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, the crime is like there's this new fad or whatever you want to call it. It's a horrible thing of carjacking. And carjacking since 2019 is up 1,100%. So it's like almost, yeah, like it's like 4 or 5 times a week there's a carjacking now. And all these idiots are on camera. It's all like 17, 18-year-old kids. They're all on camera. None of them really get away with it.
Yeah.
But it's some new thing that's going on. And it's like, you know, we have a small police force as it is. And they said they were, you know, anywhere from like 400 to 500 or upwards short on cops, you know. So many of them quit during the pandemic and during a lot of the, you know, backlash against police officers and whatnot, that they were just like, fuck this, I can find something better to do, you know. So we're very undermanned. I mean, luckily for us, and we actually talked Thursday, Robin and I almost went to the French Quarter, but in the daytime.
Yeah.
And we tell all our friends coming in from out of town, we're like, I know it might be a little enticing to go out at night in the French Quarter, but it's not safe. You know, there's shootings, unfortunately, there's shootings, there's robberies, just you name it, it happens. And we enjoy going down at like 2 PM and catching an Uber home by like 6. Like if the sun's going down, we're like, okay, last call, for a beer or something. Let's call Uber and let's get home where we feel safer. So we're lucky. We live in a little town, but we're only about, like literally 10, 12 miles from the French Quarter.
Yeah.
So if we want to go, and it's really beautiful in the daytime. Over the years, they've done a great job of really keeping it a lot cleaner than it was when we were kids growing up.
Yeah.
And but I mean, at night it's very shady. It's dangerous. There's, yeah. I mean, every big city has shady parts of town. Here in the United States, anyway. But you have to know where to go and not to go. But back to the original thing, the girl that made the quote or whatever it was.
I wonder where
where's she from?
Oh, was she a stripper?
Yeah, I think she's a colorful young lady. She's a colorful woman. She writes a pretty edgy column. She's anonymous, so I don't actually know who she is.
Oh, I got you. I mean, I'd want a name. I was just wondering where she was from. But, I mean, I to a degree I understand it, but it's also like, if you're not
on what her scene is too.
Right. I mean, if you're not from here, you're not gonna understand it. And for those who do come from out of town and fall in love with the city, which I have a ton of friends who have moved here that are not from here and they absolutely love it.
Yeah. Awesome.
So for every bad thing about this city, there's about 10 good things, in my opinion.
It depends on what her scene was too. Like, what was she into, or because
well,
there's
true.
Always good and bad.
Yeah. Well, look, sorry. Yeah. It doesn't matter. She's not that significant. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's all.
Yeah. But how did being from New Orleans shape you as a music fan? How do you think it shaped
I like to say in the interviews, and honestly, it's a situation of really subconsciously. I mean, New Orleans is such a music town. There's so much talent in every genre of music, and it really is such a music town that we growing up, like subconsciously, you don't realize that the music that you're hearing constantly, that's New Orleans born and bred music, and all the legendary bands. I mean, the Neville Brothers, the Funky Meters, Dr. John, all this stuff. We all grew up on all this type of music. And, I do like to think that if Crowbar and pretty much everybody else down and I Hate God, and, whatever, all of us, if we were from another town, we probably wouldn't sound like we do. And so for that, and everyone always asks, what do you think it is? And the only thing that ties in, and most of the guys agree, is that, when we were younger, we all grew up listening to all of these great bands that are from New Orleans. It was all over the radio, or, if your parents are having a barbecue or a crawfish boil or whatever, and they were playing records when you were a kid, they played this type of music, And, I think that subconsciously it's just embedded in our brains, and we just, so for us, it's natural to, to have a behind the beat groove and things that a lot of genres and bands from a lot of different cities don't have,
Yeah, it's a special sound, and it reaches you on a really primal level. Like, I think, it's the soul and the blues and stuff. And I wanted to ask you about Typo Negative, because obviously you have a Typo logo on your hand, and I don't think there's a bigger commitment than a hand tattoo, because you got to show that forever. That's beautiful. And I think you and Peter,
absolutely.
You and Peter still share there's something about like the primal nature of both of your voices, and the sorrow, you can communicate sorrow and love and all these kind of deep emotions in this really guttural way. Like, can you tell us a bit about how you connected with that band and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, like, my love of Peter Steele and Typo, it really started with the Carnivore Retaliation album. And then when I had Phil and someone had actually gotten me, they weren't even called Typo Negative yet. I don't even know what the band was, but Phil had gotten a copy from the underground from somebody he knew of Slow, Deep, and Hard. And I had that for quite a while before the record was actually released on CD or whatever, and I could go buy it. I just had a cassette tape. So I listened to it forever. I didn't even, and then I found out the band was going to be called Type O Negative. And of course I got it as soon as I could on disc. But all of the Type O, even as the sound evolved and changed, and I guess became more, accessible to the mainstream, and their image kind of evolved into a total goth thing, and they had their own thing going on. I still, just loved everything that they've ever done, and I don't know. For me, it was like, Peter always said, he wanted Type O Negative to sound like Black Sabbath meets the Beatles, and I'm like,
I just found out I saw him twice. I didn't realize.
I know. For me, it's like I didn't necessarily want Crowbar to sound like Black Sabbath meets the Beatles, but I wanted some Sabbath in it. And as I've gotten older, I've really gotten into the Beatles big time. When I was a kid, I was more of a Rolling Stones fan. They just seemed raunchy rock and roll, loose, where the Beatles, seemed, I mean, especially the earlier stuff was a little, I Want to Hold Your Hand and stuff was a little too popish, where the Stones were a lot edgier and nastier. But as I got older, I really started to appreciate the brilliance of the Beatles. But I don't know, man. I remember hanging out with Kenny Hickey, the guitar player for Type O, and Johnny Kelly, the drummer. And Down were recording the Down 3 record in LA or Hollywood, whatever, different parts out there. And they were playing in Hollywood. And we went and saw Celtic Frost support them, but we couldn't see Type O. Pepper and I had to go back to the studio for guitar tracks. So we did that. And then the Celtic Frost guys came to the studio and we all started partying. And next thing you know, Pepper and I are on the Type O bus, and it's just Johnny and Kenny and me and Pepper in the front lounge. And we're doing kind of like we used to do with Dime. We're just pounding beers and woo, we're all singing together, just listening to Kiss, listening to AC/DC, just old 70s rock and roll we grew up on. And I remember it was probably like 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And we were pretty tore up, but we stepped out the bus, we said our goodbyes, gave him a hug, and we're waiting on a taxi cab. And, I remember looking at Pepper and going, dude, they're just like us. They're just from Brooklyn. We're from New Orleans, but they're just like us. The same kind of guys.
Yeah.
They grew up on the same shit, different culture and everything, obviously, up in New York. But, and I feel that way. I feel like, the things that influenced me, especially a lot of the hardcore bands that Peter was into as well, were a big influence on me. So I was influenced by a lot of stuff that Peter Steele was, and then he became my biggest influence for Crowbar. So, always a special place in my heart for him. God bless him, and all the guys and all the music they created. So,
Runs pretty deep in you.
Thank you. I guess.
True. Like, I wanted to talk about like just your life as a guitar player. Like, what were the first songs you learned to play, and when did you kind of work out how you wanted to fit into music, especially playing with your guitar players and stuff like that?
Initially, I mean, like a lot of kids, that looks great, my baby. I had an acoustic, and I'm ear taught. I taught myself how to play and listen to the records. So the first thing I learned on guitar, which I started playing guitar in 78. I was 13 years old. Actually, maybe 77-ish, whatever, 12, 13. But I took it real serious, and I taught myself, the best I could. But the first thing I learned on guitar, like so many kids in the 70s, was Smoke on the Water, Deep Purple, but I learned it only on the E string. Just bum, 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 which of course is very incorrect. But that was the first thing I learned. But, once I got an electric guitar, I would say in high school, I was so into sports, athletics, I played football, I ran track, weightlifted, all of that kind of stuff. But my love for music was still there, but I kind of was looking at it like, okay, at a certain point, I'm like, all right, I got, I'm in senior year. I got one more year of high school left. So I want to dedicate everything I can to sports, because this is the last chance I'm ever going to get to do organized sports. You know, not just playing for fun with my friends or whatever, or lifting weights to stay and try to be in shape and do it for fun because I enjoy it. So, you know, for me, it was like, when I graduated in way back in 1983, when I graduated, I really took guitar. That's when I just, oh, there's Ace. Yeah, Ace man. The big puppy dog. Come here, Ace. Ace man.
Oh, look at
There's
everything.
Ace. But
That's one of them.
that's one, yeah, one of the many. But he's beautiful. But yeah, so like you know, I took sports really, really seriously. And then as soon as I graduated from high school, I said, fuck it, I'm going for it. I want to be in a band, because I felt like if I went to college and, you know, I would give up the one opportunity I had. It's kind of like, you can always, you know, I could have been 35 years old and said, this is not working out. Let me stop and go to school or learn a trade or whatever, and just be a regular 9-to-5 guy and whatnot. But for me, I figured at the very worst scenario, it would be me doing that, going to school or learning, you know, some kind of trade or something to get a regular job. But I was pretty damn determined that, you know, from the time I graduated high school, I said, all right, I made pretty good grades. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm not an idiot either. That's enough. I don't need any more school, and I need to teach myself how to play guitar. And I really, really improved drastically in like that period of time, from say 18 years of age to like 20 years of age, like where every single day, I mean, I got a regular job working 7 a.m., got off at 3:30 in the afternoon. And literally I would jump in the shower when I got home, make a sandwich or something to eat, and I would play guitar, just picking out songs from other bands every day. And you know, and that's when my real love of the instrument and the love of the guitar, and realizing this is what I want to do with my life, you know, that's really when I came about. And it was, for me, I made, there's no retirement plan, there's no anything. I told myself, I'm like, you know, after a few years of doing this, I'm like, all right, dude, you know, talking to myself, I'm like, you're past the point of no return. That's all there is to it. You're not, this is what you're doing. You're not taking no for an answer. You're going to do everything you got to do if it kills you to make a living, and eventually, you know, to make a living doing, playing music. And it took me until I was 36 years old, I believe, to be able to, 36 years old to be able to make a living playing music. Well, and not having to do, so I mean, from, you know, starting this journey, like in reality, you know, at 18 years old, even though I had played gigs during high school, you know, really started taking the guitar seriously. I mean, it took me like 18 fucking years of working shitty jobs and touring for no money in a van, you know, playing 30 shows in a row and all of this, to get to a point where I actually was making enough money to even get by, you know, but to make a living. And luckily, I'm still, you know, still able to do that. This is my job, and this is my life, you know, outside of family, and that's that.
What was the catalyst? What was the thing that made it somehow possible at age 36? What happened at that point that made it suddenly viable?
Basically, when we began recording the Down 2 record in 2001, at the time, you know, Phil and Rex believed they needed a break from Pantera. And, you know, in my opinion, they certainly deserved it after, you know, everything they had done from the time Phil joined. Up until that point, they never took a break. It was just constant touring, you know, writing, recording, back on tour, you know, and, you know, so they kind of really, you know, we made really good money touring and doing the record for Down 2. And, you know, I did go shortly back to work, just because when Hurricane Katrina came, that was 2005. Right. And it was kind of ironic or funny or whatever, you know. Well, sadly, there's nothing's funny about the storm, but the story was Phil's dad, at that time around Katrina, Phil's dad owned a killer Italian seafood restaurant, and me, Phil, and Pepper, and I guess Jimmy, wanted to go eat on a Wednesday. I talked to him on Friday night. And we still didn't know where the storm was going to come. The storm hit on Monday. Well, we were going to go the following Wednesday and eat at his dad's restaurant and have some beers and talk about everything and kind of get down, back, roll in, and and then Katrina came. So I was doing electrical work, which I didn't know the first fucking thing about. Luckily, a good friend of mine, a guy he had went to school with and grew up with, was really cool. And he said, look, dude, he goes, I'm a first class electrician. I'm a certified air conditioning guy. You drive the truck. You do all the labor work, and I'll teach you how to do this the right way. And he did. So it got to a point at the end of my tenure of working for FEMA and doing the electric hookup for the trailers for people. It got to the point where I could do everything. And one day he was like, do you want to tie in the electrical line to the breaker box? And I'm like, dude, I play guitar for a living. I don't want my arm blown off, and I said, thank you for getting me this far. Of course I've forgotten it all, but, and then around the time, the end of my tenure doing that, Phil's rehab on his back surgery was going fantastic. And all the guys were eager to get together and start jamming. So we said, look, we've never played overseas. Let's book. And we hadn't had a record out since 2002. This is now going on. This is 2006, early 2006. And I'm still working for the FEMA stuff, And so we booked the tour, I think in May and June in Europe. And we went over, before we even left New Orleans, all the shows were sold out. So that's when we really, we were like, we really have something special here, So we worked on the Down 3 record, and as we touched upon earlier in the interview, was the supporting Heaven and Hell and all that stuff, which came about in 2007, and then Down 3 Over the Under was released in 2007. We toured with that a good bit. We toured all of 2008, all of 2009. Slowed down a little bit for a while, but once that all came into play. Thankfully, along with that, and then when I did part ways with the guys for a few years and concentrate on Crowbar hadn't done anything in so long that people were starved for it, and it became like it was way bigger than it had ever been. And I'm like, wow, this is actually a really nice surprise, But we were able to really, kind of make a living even doing Crowbar. And for me, like when Zero and Below comes out, that's 19 records for me, Yeah, so it's 12. That'll be 12 with Crowbar, 4 with Down, 2 with Kingdom of Sorrow with Jamie Josta, and I have 1 solo record, and I'm almost complete my second solo record. Complete with my second solo record. So things are moving good because we have a tour here in the States with Sepultura and Sacred Reich that begins March 4th, and as soon as we get back from that, we start writing. We'll have some shows with Down in May, but it's only 3 shows. So we're going to start writing the next Crowbar record because I think we touched upon it in the first half of the interview, but it's been on the shelf for 2 years, so we're itching to write new Crowbar material. Yay. So, and there's really nothing we can do this summer in Europe and stuff like that, so, I'll do some Down shows and concentrate really with writing. I'll finish up the second solo record, but my main focus will be really writing the Crowbar record, the next Crowbar record, which will be the 13th record. And of course, if we put this one out March 4th here in the States, we won't be able to put it out till probably the end of the summer of next year, but that's okay. We have a lot of festival stuff and tours and everything that were supposed to happen this summer that are getting knocked back to 2023. So, it'll be good timing. So,
yeah, that's great. What's your solo record? What's the vibe on that?
I don't know if you heard the first one at all, but it's along the lines of the first one, but it's a natural progression. I decided the first one's really mellow. This one's got nothing heavy. I mean, nothing like Crowbar heavy or, even Down, heavy. Maybe a few songs could be considered in the Down vein where it's more of a rock and roll type thing, but it's really, it's more it's a ton of harmony guitars, which I absolutely love doing. And just a different side. I mean, I listen to so many styles of music. And only, I write so many different styles of music just on my own for fun.
Yeah.
Like that's my thing is I've never been the kind of guy to sit down and practice running scales on guitar, with a metronome to see how fast I can do them. I mean, nothing wrong with that, but I'm the kind of guy when I pick up a guitar, I'm writing. That's what I do. That's where my creativity comes from. And so for me, there's so many things I write that can't be a Crowbar song or a Down song or a Kingdom of Sorrow song for that matter. So I'm kind of, it's just another way for me to express myself musically, another side of my musical personality, so to speak. So I'm looking forward to it as well. I just love writing and being in the studio. If I could go every day at like a regular job at 9 a.m. and knock off at 4, I would go to the studio and just write songs every day and record. I love it.
Awesome. What is the kind of wildest, what's the weirdest thing you've written that we could never hear? What kind of have you ever written a pop song?
Not straight up pop, so to speak, but if you look up anything from my first solo record, it's Kirk Windstein, Dream in Motion is the name of the record. Yeah. And the video's on YouTube. The video came out great. It's kind of like about my life, about how everything I do is an actual dream in motion. Everything I wanted to do is happening, and it's been happening for a good while now, thank God. And but there's a lot of stuff on that is very hooky and very mellow and pop-ish. It's influenced by 70s soft rock and but in an eerie way, throw a darkness into most of it to give it that vibe. But it's like there's nothing that I write really that's not ever used.
Yeah. It finds a home somewhere.
Exactly. And now with the solo outlet, there's no rules. There's not really rules for Crowbar or rules for Down, but I can't bring in, if you get a chance to look into that solo record, I can't bring in that type of stuff to, Crowbar and Down or Kingdom. It's just not, it doesn't fit. It wasn't meant to fit, and that's that. So I'm fine with, Ace. I'm fine with, with doing the solo thing. So it gives me an outlet of, regardless of which style I'm writing, I have something, something I can use it with. So, that I'm lucky in that sense that having so many outlets, musically, it works great for me. So,
well, what's I guess I want to talk with Down. I think Down NOLA is one of the most perfect rock records ever made. I think it's just there's something about it. It's got a whole vibe. It's a whole storyline. It's a whole thing, and I'm really glad you guys made it. I've listened to that album on repeat for a zillion years, and I think
awesome.
That combination of you guys is so special. What did you and Pepper bond over musically and stuff? And what do you think you
we kind of, the thing a lot of people don't realize, Down was formed in 1991 is when we did the first demo, the first 3-song demo with Temptation's Wings, Losing All, and Bury Me in Smoke. But once we started recording that record, we found that, all of us really are influenced by the same stuff. We all, especially as we get older, Phil, I will say, he listens to a lot of stuff that probably the rest of us wouldn't listen to. That's just his personality. He's on the eternal hunt for the most obscure stuff he can find, and it works for him. That's his thing. Whereas, me and Pepper and Jimmy and Pat can put on a Johnny Winter record or something and just love the hell out of it. Like blues. We're more into blues, classic rock. Thin Lizzy and bands like that would really influence me very, very heavily with the harmony guitar stuff. I think that's why Crowbar's got so much guitar harmonies so many guitar harmonies in the songs, is that we don't do solos in Crowbar. I do a lot of solos with Down, so does Pepper, but with Crowbar, that was kind of a thing from the beginning. We were like, trying to dummy it down, so to speak, and just kind of, just write heavy riffs and just make it different. Everybody was playing 1,000 miles an hour, playing thrash, seeing how fast they could play guitar. And we kind of went in the opposite direction. But Thin Lizzy, for me, bands like that, and, Wishbone Ash, the August record is a classic record, full of great, brilliant harmony guitar work. I mean, stuff like the Allman Brothers is unbelievable, guitar work. And Skinner's got a little bit, but, that's my thing is, a lot of times, like with Down, I think that we were all playing in these bands that were heavy, and we said, we kind of were like, look, obviously we all love Sabbath. I mean, who doesn't? But we wanted to incorporate a lot more than that. We wanted to incorporate our influences that we got from other bands, the bands like Trouble, St. Vitus, of course, Sabbath, but, Leonard Skinner, stuff. I mean, all of us guys at one point or another have gone through even Phil, I would think, have gone through a bit of a lengthy, like Leonard love of rediscovering Leonard Skinner brilliance type thing or something, and of course it's Southern rock and being from the South, it was a household name, well, pretty much for everybody in the States. I mean, it had a lot of huge radio hits, but it's just something we grew up on, so it was a way of life, and so for me, I think Pepper and I quickly came to the realization that we're two completely opposite types of guitar players, and really it works out fantastic that we are, because the things he writes and the things he plays are things that I wouldn't do, and vice versa. So the combination together when we play it's just something special about it when we jam together, that the sound of us both playing the stuff and playing it so differently is really, really a huge, important part of the Down sound.
Really? Are you guys gonna write more music, or?
I think another thing that's on the plate, which we've been trying to address for a while, I think before we write anything new, we want to do like a 6-song cover song EP, but we want to take very obscure songs and kind of rewrite them in a Down way. I think that would be, with everything everyone else has going on in their other bands, I think that's the easiest way to get out, quote, that new Down music. Yeah. And so we're not going to be doing covers of Into the Void by Black Sabbath and things that are obvious or whatever. We're trying to do different things. Shit, one of the songs they sent me as a possibility the other day, I never heard in my life, and it was great. And I'm like, we could really turn this into a great Down song. So, we kind of want to take these songs that are obscure but brilliant songs, put them in a blender along with our ideas, and kind of come out, with that first. And then, if everyone's been on a 2-year break, so it's like everybody's still ready to get busy, with their main projects. But, I would love to do more Down music in the near future. Absolutely. And I know the fans would love it as well. Yeah. So, but first and foremost, we want to try to knock out this EP. And I think that'll really, put us on, just get us back together, jamming and working on, even though we didn't write it, it's still new material, stuff to go learn, to trick up, to make our own, and to record, just to be back in the studio. I haven't been in the studio with these guys since 2012 or 13 maybe. So it's a long time.
Has it been 10 years?
Well, when we first parted ways, I like to call it, it was in July of 2013. So, but that EP, the first EP is the one I'm on. I think we actually recorded that. Yeah, we did that in, I would say, 2012. Wow. Yeah, we definitely did. It was 2000, kind of maybe summer 2012 or something.
Yeah,
the first EP, and then we parted ways in July, August of 2013, and I got back with him for 2020, but the only thing we did was the one live stream for NOLA, because of the COVID business.
Well, I'm excited to hear it because I mean, yeah, I mean, your bands have such a strong flavor. Like Crowbar sounds like Crowbar, Down sounds like Down. You did a Dreamweaver cover with Crowbar. That's incredible.
Thank you.
That's actually a good example of you guys taking a song like that and making it completely your own.
That was in a kind of drunken stupor, and it was really meant to be a joke. And then the next day I went to the studio and listened to it. It was recorded like 4 o'clock in the morning or something, you know. And it was just me and the drummer that played on Equilibrium, Sid Mons, who I grew up with. And I said, man, no, the song's heavy, except the chorus is way too happy. It's major key. So I did like this dark, like a descending thing. I kind of rewrote the chorus to it to make it heavier. And it worked, you know. I mean, a lot of people love it. Even like Robin, she goes, growing up as a kid, she goes, I hated the original version, but I loved the Crowbar version, you know. Yeah, it was played. I had the 45, you know, 7-inch single of it, but it was played very, very, very heavily, like, you know, like multiple times a day, heavy rotation on all album-oriented rock stations back in whenever it came out, 75 or something, you know.
Yeah, it would have been, yeah. It's great when you take something cheesy and give it like, put some meat in the sandwich, if you will.
Absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree.
That's good. It's like, well, okay. So question we ask everyone is, who would be on your musical Mount Rushmore? Who would be the 4 faces carved into the stone?
Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy, Tony Iommi, I guess Ace Frehley, and I personally would put only 4.
Yeah. I mean, you can have an extra one if you want. Everyone gets mad at me.
I'll put Peter Steele, and I'll throw in Jimmy Page as well.
Yes. See, my dream is all these carved. Yeah, carry on. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, for me, Zeppelin was like, I kind of rediscovered Zeppelin in the 80s. I loved them as a kid, and I had, you know, a lot of the records, of course. But then, you know, I started as I got more and more seriously into guitar playing and beginning to write originals, I realized, like, I'm not the biggest fan of Jimmy Page as his solos and whatnot, you know. But as a songwriter and as a producer, he's just fucking brilliant, you know. So I have a huge love of Led Zeppelin, you know, and the diversity of stuff they put on a record, you know, from one song to the other. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm into with the Beatles now. It's like the diversity of it. It's like Queen, you know. Queen, you know, will have a waltz type song or something followed by something that's really heavy, and, you know, it's a little bit of everything. It's just brilliant songwriting, brilliant musicianship, brilliant vocals, you know. Queen's another one that I love. I mean, you know, there's so many great classic rock bands that it's really difficult to just pick one. It just depends on the mood I'm in, you know.
Yeah. Well, you grew up in the golden age of rock and roll, and then you guys made a whole new sound. You know, that's really, that you can hear the bones of it and stuff, but, you know, built, you know, it's cool to see like the family tree of rock and roll develop over time. And, you know, but that was, you know, must have been a pretty amazing time to grow up, like rock on the radio.
To me, it was the best. I mean, people always put things on Facebook like, if you had to live in, you know, in the now, you know, in the current year 2022, or you could go back and live in the 70s, and immediately I'm like, give me the 70s any fucking day. The world was a lot simpler, you know, and the music was just incredible, you know. And I mean, I know I'm old or getting old, and I try not to sound like my parents or, you know, older people where they, you know, they're stuck in their music that they grew up on, and they don't like anything new. It's just, I just find it really hard to imagine, at least in my mind, you know, that you're going to find, you know, a new Led Zeppelin, you know, a new Black Sabbath, a new even Fleetwood Mac or the Eagles or anything like that. I mean, for me, I just don't hear it, you know. but you know, it could be part of my age and part of how much those songs meant to me growing up. And it was Rob Halford that one I read a quote, and I'm almost finished with his book, which is amazing.
I've read it too. It's incredible. What a life you've had.
Yeah, I'm about 85% of the way through it. But I read a quote maybe like a year or two ago, and he was like, you know, just talking about music in general. He goes, one of the magical things about music is that you can hear a song on the radio you haven't heard in forever, and or even if you whenever you do hear that song, it brings you back to a certain time and a certain place. And that's how I am. Like certain songs I hear on classic rock stations, it brings me back to, you know, going to the grocery store with my mom or something during the summer, and me and my sister are listening to rock radio, and the song comes on, just like, you know, just innocent times of your youth growing up, and you didn't have a care in the world. And, you know, as we all know, the older you get, the more responsibilities you take on, the harder, you know, life does get. So it's kind of, all music is an escape. But when you listen to something like that if you close your eyes, it really does bring you to a different time and a different place. That was so, you know, so wonderful. It's just part of the magic of music, and that's why it is the universal language.
Why? What was the soundtrack to your first falling in love and first heartbreak? Do you remember what like you were listening to at that point?
I was heavily into Van Halen, mostly, and that was. I mean, Van Halen is still a bit of Kiss, you know, but Van Halen at that point, I just started discovering new wave of British heavy metal, but at that time, Van Halen was my favorite band. So
5 songs that changed your life, and then I think that'll be our last question. Yeah.
Okay. I would say Deuce by Kiss off of the Alive 1 record, the live version of Deuce. I would say Ain't Talking About Love by Van Halen.
Yep.
I would say the song Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath. Let's see. I would say I changed my life. I'll go Rock Bottom by UFO. And for the 5th one, I will say Suck My Dick by Carnivore or SMD. Off of Retaliation.
That's a nice cross section of
very subtle. Well, they did call it SMD, but you know, the title.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a brilliant hardcore song with like one of the heaviest middle breakdowns I've ever heard in my life.
How'd you fall in love with hardcore briefly?
For a short while when I left my quote unquote, you know, metal band, I just started looking more and more into underground stuff. And really, I left my metal band in '87 to join. It was more of a punk band that was kind of starting to get a punk metal edge. And when that collapsed, I was always just looking for, like, I loved fast music. I had just gotten to the point where I got into thrash as soon as I heard it, and I loved it. And I got into it from the very beginning, and I still love it. But I think hardcore was a different, even though thrash was pretty much, you know, against all of the image stuff and whatnot, hardcore was even more so. And it was hardcore was more of an attitude, you know. I mean, having read Roger from Agnostic Front's book, and I've read The PMA Effect with John Joseph from the Cro-Mags. I've read The Sick of It All book with Pete and Lou Kohler. You know, you see, it was more of a street thing, and really when the crossover thing started first happening, where hardcore and heavy metal was starting to meet up, you know, I was listening to all the slow stuff, you know. Trouble to me had a lot of slow songs. St. Vitus, of course, early Melvins, but I was also listening, like when I wanted to listen to fast stuff, and I think it probably came from my love of Motorhead as well. Like, even though they were just a fast rock and roll band, you know, the hardcore kids loved them, even though they looked metal, because it was real. You know, it was honest. You know, wear your heart on your sleeve. It's just honest rock and roll.
Yeah.
But you know, I loved, like I always say with Crowbar, you know, we normally, when we play fast, all our beats are hardcore beats, and we don't really go any faster than Motorhead.
Yeah.
So that's fast enough for me. Not that I'm old. It's just, for me, that's what I like fast. You know, I just personally, I respect the hell out of people that can play it, but things like blast beats and stuff are just not really my thing.
Yeah.
But you know, I can appreciate it, of course. Any good musicianship or any good songwriting or anything original, I appreciate the fuck out of it.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not really my thing. You know, I'm more into give me a real fast Motorhead beat, or a fast, Gnostic Front or Cro-Mags or Stick of It All or whatnot, you know, thing. And that, you know, it's kind of the two styles of music that I just loved, was the slow doomy stuff, and especially with melody in it, like Pete Steele did, and then, you know, hardcore stuff. So
it's interesting because that's kind of got like a lot of emotion, and the hardcore's got a lot of attitude in that. And I feel like so many of the bands in your world, like, you know, going out to even like Converge, and not necessarily you guys are the same, but similar in that you're incredibly accomplished players, but you're hardcore kids in your head. Like, you have that hardcore attitude of just, we're here to play and kick ass, and, you know, like for the right reasons, I guess. No one's in wrong reasons. I mean, why would you? You're in it for the right reasons. Most people in this world, like,
well, we like to think so, but you know, I do agree though. And you know, for us, even with Crowbar in the very, very beginning, of course, I started losing my hair, as you can see there. And I was like, first thing I said is, I had long hair. I said, I ain't fucking going down with a skullet or a comb over. I'm like, I'm not, no. As soon as it starts waving goodbye, I'm taking the clip. So I shaved my head. Yeah. Well, everybody in the band had long hair. I did. And then the other guys in the band, the other three guys that played on Obedience to Suffering, which was really the first real lineup of Crowbar, the first record, we all shaved our heads. So we all had shaved heads, and we were all in a hardcore. You know? So it was kind of like we looked like a hardcore band, you know, and that was and still is an element of our sound.
Yeah.
So, but I like the realness of it. I like the unity of the scene of it, you know, which really all in all is a very positive thing. You know, when you read these guys' books, or you know these guys, and you hear about, you know, all the stories from the early days and everything. You see how the unity of it is really strong, you know, and I love that, especially when, you know, it really does, in the big picture of things, it stands for something very positive.
Totally.
And it's great. It's anything like that pulls young people in a positive direction and gets them to love music and let out some aggression is a good thing by me.
Totally. It's a level playing field. You know, the gaze is level, if you will. You know, like you're on a pedestal there. It's your music and our music, and that's a beautiful thing. I think that's a good place to end. I think it's a strong. Yes.
Agreed.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kirk. Like, it's awesome to hear.
Thank you.
You know, I have a great time learning more, painting the bigger picture, and good luck with all the music, and hope we get back to the normal world of live touring eventually. I hope one day you come back to Australia. One day American rock and roll will return.
We would love to. I don't care for the flight, but other than that, you know, it was, I think Melbourne to LAX was 15 and a half hours. And then we got to go through customs and then go another 4 hours to New Orleans, you know. So it's a long one, but it's worth it.
We're going to have to come there. It's fine. We'll go on the pilgrimage, the holy pilgrimage to the land of American rock and roll. Well, thanks everyone for watching or listening. This is the Revolver Fan First podcast. This is Kirk Windstein of Crowbar. Ton of music going to come out in the future times, which is awesome. May your day be most triumphant.